game start.
Welcome back to the Average Joe Nerdcast. I'm Nate, your resident boogeyman. And this October, the show has transformed. We're cracking open haunted arcade cabinets and dusting off VHS tapes with frayed labels. And we're thumbing through an ancient grimoire of monsters. For the next 4 weeks, we're building something special. An audio monster manual. Each episode will summon a new creature, trace its origins, and seal it into the book of Nerdoween. Along the way, we'll revisit slasher icons, childhood Halloweens, spooky games, creepy comics, and a whole lot of retro nostalgia. Because Halloween isn't just one night, it's a season. It's neon-lit arcades, VHS marathons, and plastic masks that barely let you breathe while you beg for just one more Snickers. And for the next month, we're bringing it all back. So here we go. Week 1, Monsters in Pixels and Panels. We'll kick off our monster manual with the King of Darkness himself, Count Dracula. Then we'll rank the top 5 slashers, time warp back to 1980s Halloweens, swap gaming ghost stories, dig into comic creeps, and hear from you in the community checkpoint. So grab your controllers and light a candle against the dark, and let's press start on Nerdoween. Today we open the very first page of our Nerdoween Monster Manual. Every week we'll add another creature to this audio grimoire, tracing their roots, their rise, their impact on nerd culture, and what their legacy looks like today. And where else could we possibly start but with the king of monsters himself, the Lord of Darkness, Count Dracula. Now, before Dracula was a cape and a castle, he was a whisper in the dark. The idea of a vampire is as old as human storytelling. Nearly every single culture has some version of the undead feeding on the blood of the living. In Eastern European folklore, vampires weren't suave aristocrats. They were bloated corpses with blood on their lips. They crawled from their graves to torment their families. Often blamed for disease outbreaks. When tuberculosis swept through villages, people dug up bodies looking for signs of vampirism. Fresh blood in the mouth, nails that looked like they'd kept growing. Really, it was just natural decomposition. But to the terrified, it meant something undead was feeding on the living at night. Then you've got the historical inspiration, Vlad III of Wallachia, better known as Vlad the Impaler. Ruler in the mid-1400s, infamous for his brutality against enemies of his kingdom. We're talking mass impalements, public displays of corpses, a reign soaked in blood. While Bram Stoker's Dracula isn't a biography, he borrowed Vlad's surname, Dracula, and mixed it with vampire folklore that already haunted Europe. So the recipe was ready. Ancient superstition, real historical terror, and the human fear of death itself. And out of that cauldron, Dracula was born. So in 1897, Bram Stoker publishes Dracula. The novel crystallizes the vampire myth. A Transylvanian count with a crumbling castle traveling by night repelled by crucifixes, garlic, and holy water. Stoker didn't invent vampires, but he sure did set the rules. Now jump ahead a little bit to 1931, and Bela Lugosi steps onto the screen in Universal Pictures' Dracula. The accent, the slicked back hair, the cape, that performance is Dracula for generations. Suddenly, the vampire isn't a bloated corpse. He's a tall, elegant figure, charming and terrifying in equal measure. Lugosi gave the world its template. In the 1950s through the 1970s, Hammer Horror picks up the torch with Christopher Lee. This Dracula is taller, darker, more violent, red eyes, dripping fangs, more sensual, more brutal. Hammer made Dracula dangerous again, reminding audiences that beneath the aristocracy, he was still a predator. Comics, of course, couldn't resist either. Marvel Comics launched Tomb of Dracula in 1972. It ran 70 issues, blending gothic horror with superhero action. And let's not forget Blade, the vampire hunter. He made his very first appearance in Tomb of Dracula number 10. Without Dracula, there's no Blade. And then we get into games. The Castlevania franchise basically built its entire identity around Dracula. He's the final boss, the looming presence, the evil you fight across generations. If you grew up in the NES or SNES era, beating Dracula felt like a rite of passage. Cartoons and kids media picked him up too. Everything from Scooby-Doo to Count Chocula cereal. Dracula was so baked into pop culture that by the 70s and 80s, he was both nightmare fuel and Saturday morning entertainment. So why does Dracula stick in nerd culture? It's simple. He's the archetype. You want an ultimate villain? Dracula. You want a boss fight in a castle? Dracula. You want a shorthand for horror itself? The cape, the fangs, the accent. You don't even need context. Nerd culture thrives on archetypes. Superman for heroes, Darth Vader for villains, Dracula for monsters. He's endlessly remixable. And he shows up everywhere. Batman vs. Dracula in DC Elseworlds Tales, crossovers with Blade and the X-Men, as the main villain in Castlevania, generation after generation. Even Dungeons & Dragons pulled directly from him with Curse of Strahd, arguably one of the greatest tabletop adventures ever written. And it's just Dracula with a name change. Dracula is the skeleton key of monsters. Slot him into any world. Comics, games, tabletop, cartoons, and he absolutely works. He's scary, he's stylish, he's iconic. Which brings us to today. Is Dracula still scary? Well, that depends on who you ask. Some modern takes lean into camp, like Hotel Transylvania, where Adam Sandler turned him into a dad joke machine. Others aim for high gothic terror, like the BBC's Dracula series in 2020. Netflix's Castlevania gave us one of the most tragic, layered versions. A Dracula who wasn't just a villain, but a grieving husband waging war on humanity. And then there's Nicolas Cage and Renfield, bringing both camp and menace in the same breath. What's fascinating is that Dracula has survived reinvention after reinvention. He can be funny, he can be tragic, he can be absolutely terrifying. Few monsters have that kind of flexibility. The legacy is this: Dracula isn't just a character anymore. He's an archetype. He's horror distilled into a single image. Whenever you see the cape and the fangs, you don't need exposition. You already know what it is. That's why we start the Monster Manual with him, because if horror has a royal court, Dracula will always sit on the throne. And with that, the first entry on our Nerdoween Monster Manual is sealed. 1 page written, many more to come. Next week, another monster will rise from the crypt. But for now, beware the shadows and keep your garlic close. Monster Manual entry sealed. Now dim the aisle lights and check your exits. We're counting down the top 5 slashers. The boogeymen who taught a generation to check the closet, avoid the lake, and never, ever say, "I'll be right back." Now, before we start swinging machetes, a quick definition. A slasher is usually human or human adjacent, with a signature look, weapon, MO, and stalking pattern. The horror is intimate. Blades, breath on the back of your neck, footfalls on creaky stairs. No cosmic gods, no apocalypse, just you, the dark, and the thing that won't stop coming. Now, our ranking's going to blend cultural impact, iconic imagery, consistency across sequels, and nerd reach. How deeply they've invaded games, comics, and fandom. Are you ready? Lock the doors. At number 5, we're giving it to Chucky, the killer doll with a mouth. Let's start with Charles Lee Ray, the Lakeshore Strangler, better known as Chucky. In 1988's Child's Play, he body hops into a good guy's doll. And on paper, that should be fucking ridiculous. A 2-foot plastic terror? I mean, come on, he has to be the easiest one to kill, right? But the alchemy is perfect. Brad Dourif's feral, funny, venom-spitting voice, a grimy, street-level backstory, and the ultimate twist. Evil hiding in the safe space of childhood. You know the look the second you see it. Denim overalls, red sneakers, those angriest freckles in cinema. Chucky doesn't stalk the way the bigger guys do. He infiltrates. He's in the box, under the bed, or in the back seat. Whatever's nearby becomes a weapon, a kitchen knife, a household tool, a little voodoo when he's feeling theatrical. What's wild is the way the series evolves. You get straight horror out of the gate with Child's Play and Child's Play 2. Then it swings into meta black comedy with Bride and Seed of Chucky, and somehow circles back into this super cohesive, continuity-rich run under Don Mancini. Plus the TV series, which might honestly be Chucky at his very best. Teen horror energy, deep lore payoffs, Dourif unleashed. Nerd-wise, he's everywhere. Dead by Daylight turned him into a playable stalker. The comics keep poking at the amulet, the vows, and the cult. And he sticks because he weaponizes the uncanny. Something that looks harmless until it's suddenly not. If you pick one to watch tonight, go with Child's Play 2. That Toy Factory finale, chef's kiss. At number 4, going with Leatherface, the Butcher of the Backroads. Now we head to a sun-blasted Texas afternoon, 1974. A farmhouse where the American dream curdles. Leatherface doesn't quip, he doesn't monologue. He's a fright reflex with a chainsaw. The image is burned in, the butcher's apron, the bone room, that high-pitched whine before the blade bites. He's a domestic monster, protected by a family cult of enablers. The kills come fast and brutally quiet. Then the saw erupts and suddenly, the entire world is just noise. The texture is pure, rural, gothic, and true crime grime. Grindhouse cinema raging at systems that turn people into product. Slaughterhouses, assembly lines, exploitation. Every sequel and reboot tries to scrub at that first film's dirt, and it just won't come off. In Nerdland, he's carved his space. A killer in Dead by Daylight, a guest fighter in Mortal Kombat X, and the asymmetric Texas Chainsaw Massacre video game where the sound design alone will make you hear phantom revs when you try to go to sleep. The comics lean into the family myth and the mask as identity idea. Why does he last? Because the mask changes, but the idea doesn't. Civilization is a thin door, and once the hinge goes, a man with a chainsaw steps through. If you only spin one, The 1974 original is the move. That sunset chainsaw dance at the end is feral cinema. Untouchable. At number 3, Jason Voorhees, The Revenant of Crystal Lake. Jason is the campfire story that never burns out. First, he's a tragedy, the drowned boy. Then he's vengeance through mom in 79 to 80. By part 3, though, in 1982, the hockey mask snaps into place and the silhouette becomes merchandise. Readable from 100 yards. As the series rolls on, he's basically undead. All machete, boot leather, and inevitability. He's the guy who power walks through drywall, doors, hell, even teenagers. Whatever you put between you and him becomes scrap. The Friday the 13th sequels are a lab for creative kills. Sleeping bag slams, spear guns out of nowhere, the liquid nitrogen skull pop. Tone-wise, it swings from mean little grindhouse numbers to pop horror fun. But Jason stays the immovable object. Nerd footprint? Fucking huge. The asymmetric Friday the 13th the game let you be both counselor and killer. In comics, he cosplays violence across matchups with Leatherface and even Freddy versus Jason versus Ash. Why? Because of course. He sticks because he's pure slasher silhouette. Myth made into a blank mask you can project your dread onto. If you want a perfect sampler, go part 6, Jason Lives. Cemetery lighting, gothic vibes, little meta wink, peak fun Jason. At number 2, Freddy Krueger, the Dream Demon. Then there's Freddy, 1984. Suburbia snoozes, the boiler room flickers, and Robert Englund arrives with this sing-song menace nobody had heard before. Freddy breaks the rules of the slasher. He's not in your hallway, he's in your REM cycle. The fedora, the red and green sweater, that knife-fingered glove, maybe the best weapon design in horror. And the kills are imaginative nightmares. TVs that eat you, tongues through phones, puppet string veins. It's fear as surrealist special effect. The first movie whispers like an urban legend that suddenly breathes. By Dream Warriors in 87, he's a fucking rock star. Still cruel, but big operatic ideas splashing across the frame like a comic panel. Later, he goes full meta with New Nightmare, then throws hands with Jason because history demands it. Nerd spread everywhere. He's the Nightmare in Dead by Daylight. He's mixed it up in Mortal Kombat. And the comics turn dreamscapes into full battlefields. Freddy endures because of the imagination scale. Most slashers repeat a pattern. Freddy reinvents the kill every single time, and Englund's performance as signature as Darth Vader's breathing. If you pull one, make it a Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. That's the blueprint for big idea Freddy with a heartbeat. And at number 1, Michael Myers, The Shape. Finally, 1978. Haddonfield, a white mask with no expression, a kitchen knife, a slow, confident walk that feels like fate has feet. Michael Myers isn't a person so much as a force. John Carpenter literally calls him the Shape. That's the trick. Strip away motive, humanity, dialogue, and what's left is pure dread. The reshaped Shatner mask, the navy coveralls, the head tilt like a crow admiring a shiny coin, you know it instantly. He doesn't run, he just redraws the map, so wherever you go, becomes the wrong place. The original Halloween writes the grammar we're still using. The point of view prologue, the suburban creeping, the music sting that makes your bones remember fear. Timelines have branched and rebooted ever since, but the constant is the void behind the mask. You can pour any era's anxieties into that emptiness and it still stares back at you. Nerd side? He shows up in Dead by Daylight as, perfectly, the Shape, with a stalking mechanic that makes him more dangerous the longer he watches you. Comics and novels keep poking at Haddonfield, cult threads, and that unsolvable why. Why is he number one? Because the mask is the universal adapter of fear. Freddy talks, Chucky jokes, Jason thunders. Michael just breathes. If you only have time for one tonight, go back to the 1978 original, kill the lights, and let John Carpenter's score do the rest. Mount Rushmore secured. Chucky, Leatherface, Jason, Freddy, Michael, 5 masks, 5 weapons, 5 ways to wreck your weekend. And now, because this is my show, I'm tossing a bonus crown to my King of the Slashers. Now, before anyone says anything, listen, as some of you who know me in reality, sometimes I just can't leave well enough alone. My official top 5 is locked, sure, but my heart? It belongs to Ghostface. Yeah, I said it. In true Average Joe fashion, I'm crowning him as the King of the Slashers. Why? Because he's not just on screen. He's fucking everywhere. That mask, that voice, those phone calls, they bleed into real life. And I'll tell you, I've dressed as Ghostface for Halloween a few times, and when I tell you it's a hit, it's a fucking hit. Taking my kids trick-or-treating, we can't walk a block without people stopping us, and I always get at least one, "Hey, Mr. Ghostface."
Hello.
And that's the magic. Michael, Freddy, Jason, they are absolute legends. But Ghostface? Ghostface is alive. He's in your neighborhood, in your memes, in your spirit Halloween aisle. He's the slasher that still feels like he could be behind you when the phone rings.
Movies don't make psychos, they make psychos more creative.
And let's talk about that voice. Roger L. Jackson's performance is absolute legendary. That distorted, sinister phone call is pop culture burned into your skull forever. But here's a fun bit of trivia. The man behind Ghostface's voice, he's also the voice of Mojo Jojo from the Powerpuff Girls. I'm not even kidding. Which means every time Ghostface asks,
"What's your favorite scary movie?"
somewhere in the back of your brain, Mojo Jojo is also plotting to take down Blossom, Bubbles, and Buttercup. So technically, the deadliest slasher of the 90s is also a Cartoon Network villain. Now that's some range, baby. So yeah, you can keep your boogeymen and dream demons, but for me, the crown sits on a cheap drugstore mask that Wes Craven turned into an icon.
Do you like scary movies?
Hail to the king, baby. And before we wrap on this segment, let's throw out some honorable mentions because we know you're probably yelling at your phone because I didn't mention them. Candyman, urban legend made flesh, equal parts romance, tragedy, and razor-sharp social horror. Pinhead, from the Hellraiser series. A priest of pain rather than a stalker, but the look is Mount Rushmore level iconic. Norman Bates, the proto-slasher who taught cinema to fear showers. Art the Clown, modern midnight movie menace, pure shock theater with a silent grin. Jigsaw, More trap architect than slasher, but an undeniable horror pillar of the early 2000s. Disagree with our list? Perfect. That's the whole fucking point. Hit us with your top fives, and if we missed your GOAT, make your case. Best comments get featured in the community checkpoint next time. So that's the crown, that's the carnage. But let's be real. Halloween isn't just about what's on the screen. It's also about where we were, what we wore, and the streets we prowled with pillowcases full of sugar. And while I didn't grow up in the 80s myself, I'm a 90s kid through and through. You can't talk about the season without tipping your hat to the decade that practically wrote the Halloween playbook. The costumes, the VHS aisles, the candy myths, the suburban parades. The 80s built the vibe we're all still chasing to this day. So, let's take a little time warp. Cue the neon, crank the synths, and flip on that porch light. This is Halloween of Yesteryear, 1980s edition. Now, the 80s was a monster factory at the box office. The slasher boom that started with John Carpenter's Halloween in 1978 didn't slow down. It mutated. Friday the 13th in 1980 sharpened the machete formula. Nightmare on Elm Street in 1984 told you the boogeyman could get you even in your dreams. And it wasn't all doom and gloom either. You also had monster fun. Fright Night in 1985 made your next-door neighbor a vampire. The Lost Boys in 87 gave Fangs a leather jacket and a can of hairspray. And the Monster Squad in 1987 as well, it basically handed Universal's classics to a pack of kids and dared the audience to form their own treehouse club. And these weren't just films, they were fuel. Kids traded the lore like baseball cards. Could silver bullets really stop the Wolfman? Does garlic really work on this Dracula? The box office turned October into a shared language, and the whole neighborhood spoke it. And television was the nightly campfire. Annual specials were a ritual. Garfield's Halloween Adventure in 85 was cozy 1 minute, nightmare fuel the next. Disney's Halloween Treat stitched old cartoons into haunted mixtapes. And then there were the horror hosts, Elvira at the national level, Svengoolie in Chicago, and countless local creature feature personalities. Rubber bats, fog machines, sarcasm. They made you feel like part of a secret club, laughing at cheesy movies together. Meanwhile, anthology shows like Tales from the Dark Side and the 1985 Twilight Zone revival brought weekly goosebumps. And by 1987, Unsolved Mysteries turned Robert Stack into Halloween's unofficial narrator. The news felt haunted too. And if you want to see why the 1980s is remembered as the trick-or-treat decade, picture sidewalks flooded with kids, pirates, witches, Darth Vaders, He-Man chest plates squeaking, Ghostbusters proton packs cobbled together from shoeboxes. Every town had the good houses, the ones with full-size candy bars, the cul-de-sac dad who built a graveyard in his garage, the neighbor who swore he wasn't going to scare you until he did scare you. Parents swapped strategy like war generals. Hit Maple Street first. Avoid Birch. They're handing out raisins. Hospitals even x-rayed candy bags during the razor blade scares. Was it overblown? Yeah. But the myth itself became part of the ritual. I remember my mom checking my candy in the 90s because of that. And department stores were plastic wonderlands. Sears aisles, JCPenney catalogs, Ben Cooper costumes stacked in cardboard windows. vinyl smock with the character's name printed right across your chest, mask held on with one flimsy elastic band that snapped before you hit the second block. Latex masks started creeping in too, swamp things with moving jaws you could barely breathe in, front porches decked with blow mold pumpkins and cardboard bezel cutouts, and the holy grail? McDonald's Halloween pails, orange pumpkin, white ghost, green witch. If you had one, you weren't just trick-or-treating, you were flexing. And Friday nights in October meant a pilgrimage to the video stores. VHS clamshells with artwork that looked scarier than the actual movies ever were. Skulls, claws, fonts dripping blood, Creep Show, The Howling, Halloween 2. Half the fun was trying to convince an adult to rent the R-rated one for themselves. Then you'd go home, shut the curtains, and let that CRT glow turn your living room into your own private theater. Honestly, the cover art alone fueled your nightmares, and that's a part of the magic. And the arcades weren't safe either. Splatterhouse in 1988 basically let you play Jason Voorhees in side-scrolling gore fests. And at home, the NES gave us Castlevania in 86 and Simon's Quest in 87, teaching kids boss patterns and candle whip economy. By the end of the decade, you even had Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street cartridges. Brutal games, borderline unplayable, but if you beat them, you were playground royalty. Between marathons of the real Ghostbusters, Halloween seeped into your controller, and the pixels bled right back into Halloween. And stores and radios kept the same loop going. Monster Mash, Ghostbusters, John Carpenter's Halloween theme song, and if you were lucky, Thriller blasting from a boombox. Vincent Price's laugh echoing into the night was basically the national Halloween anthem. And safety PSAs were literally everywhere. McGruff the crime dog telling you to wear reflective tape, news anchors warning about poisoned candy, teachers drilling the buddy system. Were some of the scares exaggerated? Oh, most definitely. But the idea stuck. Halloween was a community pact. Everyone played their part to keep the night magical. So why do people still talk about the 80s Halloweens like they were the golden age? Because it was a perfect storm. Movies gave kids myths. TV gave them rituals. Stores turned costumes into identities. Neighborhoods became adventure maps. Video stores gave them endless nightmares to rent. It wasn't digital, it was communal. Less screen time, more shared time. A single haunted garage could become legend. A single porch could be the good candy house for literally half a decade. Once a year, every kid on the block became the star of their own horror movie. Doorbell, trick or treat. Candy rains into the bag. Elastic snaps, fog machine coughs, a dad in coveralls lunges, kids scatter. Laughter echoes, a witch's hat tumbles into the gutter. Someone swears they saw Michael Myers at the end of the cul-de-sac. Porch radio blasting Ghostbusters. Chainsaw roar. Nope, just a lawn guy, but you still ran. Pillowcases getting heavy. Kit Kats swapped for Reese's. Porch lights winking out one by one like stars burning out until only one house glows at the end of the street. And here's where you can come in. Did you live through 80s Halloweens? What was your costume? Did your neighborhood have a legendary haunted garage or house? Or maybe you've tried to recreate that vibe with your own kids nowadays. Send your memories, your photos, your Ben Cooper mask shots to averagejoenerdcast@gmail.com. I'll share some of my favorites in the coming episodes. All right, we've toured the neon decade, walked its sidewalks, and borrowed its VHS tapes. Up next, gaming urban legends, haunted cartridges, cursed music, and the myths that turn consoles into ghost stories. Now, every generation of gamers has its own campfire stories. Only, our campfires weren't in the woods. They were glowing CRTs, arcade corners, and Game Boys under the covers at midnight. The myths spread at sleepovers, on the school bus, or buried in all-caps posts on early message boards. Some of these legends came from glitches, some from creepypastas written by kids who had way too much free time, and some stuck with us because a part of us wanted to believe they were real. So today, we're cracking open the haunted chapter of our Nerdoween grimoire, Gaming Urban Legends. If you ask any retro gamer about haunted arcades, one name always comes up: Polybius. Supposedly, in 1981, a strange cabinet appeared in a few arcades around Portland, Oregon. The story goes that kids who played it reported seizures, hallucinations, night terrors. Men in black suits would show up, empty the data, and then vanish. Then, just as suddenly as it appeared, Polybius disappeared. No flyers, no screenshots, no cabinets were ever found. Just pure rumor. But here's the thing, there's no proof it ever actually existed. No cabinets, no ROMs, not even eyewitnesses that hold up. The legend didn't really surface until the early 2000s, when it spread like wildfire on online forums. But the timing made it perfect. Cold War paranoia about brainwashing, the rise of conspiracy culture online, and the idea that the government might be watching you through your favorite arcade hangouts. Was it real? Almost certainly not. But does it matter? Not really. Polybius became gaming's Bigfoot. Blurry, elusive, and always worth whispering about when the lights dim in the arcades. Next, we're going to talk about Lavender Town syndrome. So let's fast forward to the late 90s. Pokemon Mania is everywhere. Game Boys in every backpack. Trading cards banned in every classroom. But in the shadows, a story started to spread. They said that in the original Japanese release of Pokemon Red and Green, the music that played in Lavender Town was so eerie, so high-pitched, that it caused headaches, sickness, even suicides in children. And of course, it's not true. The track is unsettling, sure, all those sharp notes and ghostly tones, but there's no official evidence of it ever hurting anyone. Still, the legend latched onto something primal. The idea that the safe, colorful, happy game you loved most could secretly hurt you in ways adults couldn't understand. It's basically the Bloody Mary of gaming, only instead of chanting in the bathroom mirror, you were hunched under the covers staring at a pixelated graveyard on a green-lit screen at 11 p.m., wondering if your cartridge was one of the cursed ones. And next, Been Drowned, the haunted cartridge. There's a genre all to itself with these urban legends. The haunted cartridges, and the king of them all, Been Drowned. In 2010, a college kid posts online about buying a used copy of The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. Inside the cartridge, a save file titled Ben. Weird, but not unheard of. Except soon, things got even stranger. NPCs started calling the player Ben. Music glitched, notes stretching wrong. The moon loomed too close. Eventually, the game seemed to talk back, flashing messages like, "You shouldn't have done that." What made Been Drowned legendary wasn't just the story, it was the presentation. screenshots, hacked video clips, the whole creepypasta staged like evidence in a case file. It blurred the line between fiction and reality just enough that thousands of players swore their own cartridges might be haunted too. And here's the thing, it worked because Majora's Mask already feels haunted. The time loops, the death masks, the smiling moon, the game's atmosphere is uncanny on its own. The creepypasta just punched it up one step further. And next, Eternal Darkness, sanity made scary. Now, of course, not every gaming scare was an accident. Some were built into the design itself. Case in point, Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem on the Nintendo GameCube. This 2002 cult classic introduced a sanity meter that didn't just affect your character, it messed with you, the player. Low sanity? The game pretends to delete your save file. The on-screen volume slider starts dropping as if your TV remote is haunted. Once it told players their controller was unplugged while monsters were swarming them. It wasn't a bug, it was intentional. Pure psychological warfare. The developers wanted to break the fourth wall, to make you doubt the very console you put your trust in. And it worked. Ask anyone who played it back then. For a split second, you really thought your GameCube was possessed. It's one of the smartest, most effective horror tricks in gaming, because it made the hardware itself feel alive, like it was in on the scare. And look, we've all had our own little ghost story, a disc that froze at just the wrong moment, a sprite flickering in the shadows, a corrupted save file that erased itself while you swore you heard the console hum different. 9 times out of 10, though, it was just bad coding or a dusty cartridge contact. But in the moment, dude, it felt like the machine was alive. Like you weren't just playing the game was playing you. Gaming urban legends stick with us because they take the safe spaces we love and twist them. The Pokemon you trusted, the arcade you spent Saturdays in, the cartridge you blew dust out of. They remind us that horror doesn't always need shadows or chainsaws. Sometimes it's pixels, sometimes it's soundtracks, sometimes it's just the idea that your favorite game isn't what you thought it was. So the next time your console glitches at midnight, or a menu screen hum sounds just a little off, maybe it is just the code. Or maybe, just maybe, you shouldn't have done that. Now, if movies gave us the boogeymen, games gave us the glitches and haunted cartridges, but the comic shop? That's where the weird stuff really lived. Tucked between the capes and the cowls behind the Spider-Man and Superman racks, there was always a shelf that felt a little different. Blacker covers, sharper fonts. Stories you maybe weren't supposed to read. And today, we're opening that shelf. Welcome to Comic Creeps. Now, horror comics go way back. EC Comics in the 1950s gave us Tales from the Crypt, The Vault of Horror, The Haunt of Fear, grotesque morality plays where bad people met even worse fates. The covers were so shocking, they helped spark the 1954 Senate hearings on juvenile delinquency, and led directly to the Comics Code Authority slapping a stake through the heart of horror for decades. But horror never really dies, and by the 60s and 70s, black and white magazines like Creepy and Eerie snuck past the code. Oversized, lurid, and dripping with art from legends like Frank Frazetta and Bernie Wrightson, they felt like contraband. comic racks became graveyards where monsters refused to stay buried. And in the 70s, DC Comics birthed one of horror's greatest icons, Swamp Thing. Originally a tragic monster tale by Len Wein and Bernie Wrightson, and it reached mythic status when Alan Moore took over in the 80s. Moore flipped the script. Swamp Thing wasn't a man who became a monster, he was a plant that thought it was a man. Ecological horror, body horror, gothic romance. The run turned a pulp creature into a philosophical powerhouse. And why it matters for Nerdoween? Swamp Thing showed comics could be literary horror. Not just jump scares on paper, but slow, creeping dread. And the art? Tangled vines, dripping moss, panels that look like fever dreams. This was horror with roots. Literally. And then came John Constantine in Hellblazer, a cynical, chain-smoking Brit who cons demons as easily as he cons his friends. Constantine made horror street level. No gothic castles, just dirty London alleys and occult hustles. And what set Hellblazer apart was its bite. It mixed supernatural dread with real-world horrors. Thatcher-era politics, poverty, addiction, the message? Sometimes the scariest demons aren't the ones with horns. For nerd culture, Constantine became the anti-hero blueprint. Sarcastic, morally gray, always one step from damnation. And he absolutely resonates today. TV shows, movies, animated appearances, every time you see a gritty magician in a trench coat, that's all John Constantine's DNA. And horror comics also thrived as anthologies. Titles like Creepy and Eerie kept one-shots alive. But even Marvel and DC dipped their toes in. Remember Marvel Zombies? That actually started as a gag, but blew up into a phenomenon. Or Batman Red Rain, where the Dark Knight himself literally becomes a vampire and battles Dracula. These weren't just curios, they proved horror could slip into any universe. Spandex heroes by day, gothic bloodsuckers by night. Horror in comics wasn't a genre, it was a virus infecting everything it touched. And horror in comics just hits different because you control the pace. A movie jump scare happens whether you're ready for it or not. But in the comics, you turn the page at your own speed, which means you choose the moment the monster decides to leap out. That power makes the scare even more personal. Plus, horror comics gave nerds a safe space to flirt with the forbidden. You could hide them under your bed, trade them at school, flip through them under covers with a flashlight. For a lot of us, they were the first step into stories that felt dangerous. And from EC's decapitations to Swamp Thing's poetry to Constantine's cigarettes and cons, horror comics carved their own lane. They were proof that monsters don't just belong on the screen or in the cartridge. They belong in ink and panel, waiting on the shelf for the next curious kid. So if you ever find yourself in a dusty long box at a convention and a creepy cover catches your eye, don't pass it by. That's how the best ghost stories begin. And if comics gave us monsters we could hold in our hands, panels full of shadows, teeth, and whispered warnings, some nightmares can't be contained on a page. Some creatures are too big, too relentless, too perfectly designed to live only in ink. And for our first movie monster spotlight, we're leaving the long box behind and stepping into the cold vacuum of space. Flickering corridors, thin oxygen, motion trackers pinging in the dark. Because tonight's monster isn't drawn, it's born, and it's waiting for you in the vents. Today's spotlight is the Xenomorph. Now, not every monster needs a cape, or a knife, or even a mask. Some monsters don't belong on Earth at all. They come from the stars. They live in vents. They bleed acid. And when you finally see them, you realize you're not the hunter. You're the prey. So let's go back to 1979. Audiences are still high on Star Wars. Sci-fi in theaters means adventure, droids, lightsabers. But Ridley Scott had other plans. He gave us a haunted house in space. And the beauty of Alien is that the monster isn't just dropped on us. It evolves in stages, each one worse than the last. The egg, pulsing, leathery, waiting. The facehugger, a nightmare spider that doesn't just attack you, it violates you, makes you its incubator. Then the chestburster, exploding out of John Hurt's ribcage in a scene so raw the cast wasn't warned about the blood spray. Their shock in that scene, 100% real. And finally, the adult, sleek, biomechanical, black as night, with a mouth inside a mouth and acid for blood. Swiss artist H.R. Giger designed it, pulling from his biomechanical paintings, flesh fused with machine, sexuality fused with violence. It wasn't just scary, it was wrong. A violation of biology itself. Something that looked evolutionary and obscene all at once. And the tagline sealed it. In space, no one can hear you scream. That's not just marketing, that's the entire thesis. The Nostromo crew aren't Marines. They're truckers. They're space blue-collar workers. And when the alien shows up, they're utterly helpless. It's industrial horror. You can't shoot it. You can't reason with it. You can't contain it. And if it bleeds on you, you're dead anyway. Alien is pure dread distilled.
Final report of the commercial starship Nostromo. Third officer reporting. The other members of the crew: Kane, Lambert, Parker, Brett, Ash, and Captain Dallas are dead.
Then James Cameron comes along in 1986 and says, what if we go from haunted house to war movie? Aliens doesn't replace the original, it expands it. Instead of one creature, we get an entire hive. And at the center, the alien queen. A massive, regal, terrifying mother whose showdown with Ripley and the power loader is basically scripture.
Get away from her, you bitch!
If that line doesn't give you chills, check your fucking pulse. And let's talk about the Colonial Marines. This movie is the reason nerds have been cosplaying Space Marines for decades.
Say we take off, nuke the site from orbit. There's the only way to be sure.
Pulse rifles with grenade launchers, flamethrowers, APCs, dropships, motion trackers, pinging faster and faster until it's too late. That whole aesthetic, it comes from Aliens. You see it in Halo. You see it in Starship Troopers. You see it in Doom. Cameron basically invented the look of sci-fi military horror. But what makes Aliens perfection is the human side. Ripley is the reluctant mother, finding Newt and protecting her like she couldn't protect her own daughter.
We better get back, 'cause it'll be dark soon, and they mostly come at night. Mostly.
Hicks as the quiet, steady partner. Bishop, the android, proving himself loyal in the end. The movie has action and heart in equal measure. And when that elevator door opens and the Queen is standing there in the cargo bay, you feel it in your chest. Aliens is not just a sequel, it's one of the greatest action horror movies ever made. Back-to-back perfection with the first film. And for me, in all honesty, the series could have ended right there, and it would have been untouchable.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.
And then, Alien 3, 1992, and I'll be real with you. I fucking hate this movie. And not in the fun way, in the kind of way that makes you angry just thinking about it. Let's start off with the gut punch. Hicks and Newt, dead, off screen, before the opening credits even finish. After you spent all of Aliens investing in Ripley's little found family, poof, gone. No goodbye, no scene, just dead. That's not daring, that's fucking insulting. And the plot holes, god damn. How does a fucking egg get on the Sulaco? We saw the Queen get blasted into space. We saw the hive explode. There's no possible way for an egg to magically appear on the ship. This film just invents it out of thin air. That's not suspense, that's sloppy writing. And then, get this, a facehugger supposedly causes a fire on board. A fucking facehugger. Did it strike a match with its tail? Did it chew through a gas line like a fucking gremlin? It makes no sense. Now, some fans say it's bold, that it's tragic, that Fincher brought atmosphere and gothic weight, and sure, the prison setting is grim and industrial. The dog-born alien is a neat idea in theory. But none of it lands, because the emotional core was ripped away in the first 5 minutes, and the host adaptation angle barely explored. Imagine if they leaned into it. A quadruped alien hunting differently, using animal instincts. Instead, it's just another monster in a bad script. And I'll give David Fincher this. You can see flashes of what might have been, but the movie's a production disaster. Rewritten to death, meddled with by the studio, cut to shreds. It's a frustrating mess, and for me, it's the one Alien movie I will never rewatch unless I'm doing a masochist marathon, and I'm not that fucking depressed. Even David Fincher has disowned that movie. And the thing is, Alien 3 didn't have to be this way. There were earlier scripts floating around that could have taken the series in a completely different direction. The most famous? William Gibson's version. Yes, that William Gibson, the father of cyberpunk, author of Neuromancer. His script leaned hard into Cold War tensions. Weyland-Yutani versus the Union of Progressive Peoples. Corporations and nations both trying to weaponize the xenomorph. Hicks and Bishop were alive, front and center. Ripley was sidelined for a stretch, but the story felt like it was building out the universe instead of shrinking it down to a damp prison basement. And if you've never checked it out, there's a full cast Alien 3 audiobook adaptation of Gibson's script. Michael Biehn and Lance Henriksen even come back to voice their characters respectively. It's eerie, it's political, it's got that cyberpunk edge, and most importantly, it feels like it actually respects the momentum Aliens was building. Listening to it is so bittersweet, because you can't help but think, fuck, this could have been Alien 3. A story that carried the torch forward instead of blowing it out in the opening credits. Instead of a dead newt, we could have had an expanded war. Instead of a dog-born Xeno, we could have had nations fighting to survive a Cold War gone cosmic. So yeah, if Alien 3 frustrates you like it frustrates me, give Gibson's version a listen. It will never erase the movie, but it will show you the path not taken. And honestly, it is one hell of a ride. And then comes Alien Resurrection in 1997. And you know what? I'll kind of defend this one a little bit. Is it good? No. Is it messy and weird? Oh yeah, absolutely. But there is some fun to be had. Ripley's clone, the aliens are hybridized, there's a freaky human Xeno baby that nobody really wanted, but the movie's got a style all its own. Slimy, grotesque, comic booky almost. It's not scary by any stretch of the imagination, but it is entertaining in a midnight movie kind of way. And let's be real, Ron Perlman is in it, and Ron Perlman makes everything better. The moment he's on screen, you're rooting for him to survive, because Perlman in a space horror movie is just right. The underwater chase scene with the aliens swimming through a flooded corridor, genuinely great sequence. So yeah, Resurrection is totally dumb fun, but at least it is fun, which is more than I can say for Alien 3. And then, Ridley Scott came back with the prequels. Prometheus in 2012, Covenant in 2017. And look, I wanted to love these. The trailers promised mystery, cosmic horror, big questions about who made us and why, and visually, they're absolutely stunning. Gorgeous sets, eerie atmosphere. But the problem is, they don't know what they want to be. Prometheus sets up the engineers, the idea of humanity's creators, and then sidelines the alien itself. You get hints, definitely. You get proto-Xenos, but not the thing you came for. And Covenant tries to course correct, but then it just becomes a jumble of pseudo-philosophy, android drama, and alien greatest hits. It's like Scott wanted to elevate the franchise into myth and creation stories, but forgot that what made the Xenomorph iconic wasn't just philosophy. It was terror. And the terror gets lost under characters making stupid fucking decisions and storylines that wander off cliffs. For me, Prometheus and Covenant are just wasted potential. Not unwatchable, just kind of disappointing. So where does that leave us? Honestly, for me, the Alien series is 2 masterpieces followed by a buffet of misfires and curiosities. Alien and Aliens, perfection, back to back. Scott builds the dread, Cameron builds the action. Those 2 films are absolutely untouchable. Everything else, either completely infuriating, fun but sloppy, or fascinating failures. But the Xenomorph itself, still completely terrifying, and still perfect. Unlike Dracula or Freddy or even Jason, the alien has not softened. It doesn't wink, it doesn't crack jokes, it doesn't wear out. 45 years later, the design hasn't really changed, because it doesn't need to. It's already the perfect organism. So from haunted houses in space to bug hunts, from perfection to absolute frustration, the Xenomorph has proven one thing. Monsters evolve, but legends endure. It may never hand you candy on Halloween night, but it is part of the same lineage. The stories that remind us what it feels like to be hunted. And that's our first movie monster spotlight. Next week, another creature crawls into the light. But for now, keep your flamethrower handy and keep the motion tracker on. And whatever you do, stay frosty, Marines. All right, Joes, time to step away from the arcades and the movie monsters for a second and gather around the campfire. The community checkpoint is where I check in with you. And since it's Nerdoween, we're making it special. This month, it's all about your real-life ghost stories. Because let's be honest, everybody's got something. A weird creak in an old house, a shadow that moved when it shouldn't have. That one late-night game session where you swore the controller vibrated all on its own. Whether you believe in ghosts or not, the stories stick with us, and they say a lot about what scares us the most. Now, I was planning to read a few listener stories here, but so far my inbox is as quiet as a spirit Halloween on November 1st. So you know what? I'm going to start this one off. 3 stories, all true, all close to home, and all guaranteed to make you check over your shoulder when the lights go out. And for our first story, we'll call it The Shadow Man. I was a kid the night I saw it, and it was the kind of night where the sky feels alive, lightning flashing like somebody taking pictures of your house from the outside. One of those Kentucky storms that rattles the glass and shakes the walls. I woke up out of a dead sleep and lay there watching the shadows crawl across the wall with every flash of lightning. And that's when I saw it. A figure standing in the corner, a shadow darker than the dark. No features, no eyes, just there. It wasn't moving, and at first I thought maybe it was my imagination or light from outside doing something weird. I stared at it for what felt like forever. Then, because kids are either fearless or foolish, I reached out. My fingers brushed the wall, and that's when it moved. Not a flicker, not a trick of the storm. It shifted, smooth, deliberate, like it had been waiting for me to notice it. I froze, my heart was pounding in my ears, and then instinct took over. I dove back under the covers and stayed there, shaking, listening to the rain hammer my bedroom window. When I finally peeked out again, it was gone. I was alone in my room. It was quiet and empty except for the sound of thunder fading away. And I've never seen it again. But every time there's a storm, I still will catch myself glancing at the corners of rooms, just in case. And that one sticks with me. It's kind of funny. You grow up thinking you'll outgrow that kind of fear. You tell yourself it was a trick of the light or a bad dream. But then every so often, you hit a night where the air just feels the same. And you catch yourself looking at those corners again. And the thing about stories like that, once you've seen something you can't explain, you start noticing when other people have too. Which brings me to another story. One I didn't just hear about. I was there to experience it. The Laughing Farmhouse. This was the early 2000s. A buddy of mine's family had moved into this old farmhouse off a back road in Kentucky. No ghost stories about the house itself, but the road? Everybody in town knew its reputation. We'd grown up swapping stories about it. A bloody-faced apparition that appeared in the middle of the asphalt on foggy nights. An old church with a cemetery where folks swore the tombstones changed places. Sightings of smoky figures drifting between the trees. Classic local lore. Creepy, sure, but it was just campfire talk, right? Well, it was until it wasn't. One weekend I stayed over. It was just me, my friend, and his 3 siblings. Their parents worked 3rd shift, so once the sun went down, we had the whole place to ourselves. No adults, no neighbors close enough to hear us yell. We stayed up too late playing video games until the TV screens was the only light glowing throughout the house. Outside, the crickets were deafening, and that's when it started. First, there was a laugh. Faint, kinda way off. Not a coyote, not a far-off neighbor wandering down the road. A man's laugh, low and rolling, like somebody enjoying a private joke out in the middle of the fields. Their dogs went crazy, pacing, growling, their hackles up, and the laugh got closer and louder. Then came the knocking. Tap, 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 moving from one window to the next, like something was circling the house. There was no dad to grab a flashlight and investigate, no mom to run to. It was just us, 5 kids, frozen in a room lit only by the TV glow, listening to something walk around outside laughing. Every time one of us got the nerve to peek through the curtains, the noise just stopped, only to start again at the next window. Tap, tap, and laughing. It felt like it was playing with us, whatever it was. Now, eventually it faded, but we didn't sleep. We didn't even turn the console back on. We just sat there until dawn bled in through the curtains. They moved out within 2 years, and I don't know if whoever lives there now has ever heard it, or if the house is even there at all. All I know is, we did. And even now, when I think back to that house, it's not just the house I remember. It's that entire road, all its stories, like the land itself was keeping score. Now, you ever notice how the quiet just hits different after a story like that? It's like the air just sits heavier for just a minute. That night at the farmhouse changed the way I looked at things. I stopped laughing off people's ghost stories because whether you believe in the paranormal or not, there's something to be said for what people feel in those moments. And that brings me to the last one of the episode. Now, this wasn't my experience. It happened to a friend of mine. But I've known him long enough to tell you he's not the kind to make up stories, and this one, it's quiet, but it sticks with you. The rocking chair. My friend grew up in a small house that used to belong to his grandmother. She had passed away years before, but her favorite thing in the world was this old wooden rocking chair that sat by the window in her room. He said even after she was gone, nobody could bring themselves to move it or get rid of it. It just stayed there, like it was a part of the house. And one night he woke up to the sound of wood creaking. Now at first he thought it was the wind or the floor settling, but the sound kept going, slow, steady, that unmistakable rhythm of a rocking chair moving back and forth. He got up, walked down the hallway, and the closer he got to her room, the stronger it got. That creak, creak, creak. He said he could feel it, almost through the floorboards. When he pushed open the door, the room was dark, except for moonlight cutting through the windows. And there it was, the chair, moving on its own, just barely. Enough that you could see the wood glint in the light with every bit of motion. And then he smelled it. Her perfume, light, floral, exactly how he remembered it when she hugged him goodnight as a kid. He whispered her name, and the chair suddenly stopped. He never told his family that part until years later, but they'd all heard it at least once, that creaking in the middle of the night, that smell, that feeling like somebody was sitting there keeping watch. Some stories make you jump, others just stay with you. That's definitely one of those stories. So here's the deal. Every week of Nerdoween, I want your real-life ghost stories. So send them in. The scary ones, the funny ones, the ones that make you go, okay, I can't explain that. It doesn't matter if it's a full-on haunting or just that one night you swore something moved in the corner of your eye. Email your stories to averagejoenerdcast@gmail.com or drop them in the comments and DMs on socials. I'll read the best ones on air in the coming episodes, so your ghost story could be a part of Nerdoween history. Now, whether you've got a Dracula cape or a Ghostface mask, we've all got something spooky that sticks with us. So keep the stories coming, keep the fire burning, and we'll share them together here at the checkpoint. And that's going to do it for night 1 of Nerdoween. We've sealed the first page of our monster manual with Count Dracula, crowned our slashers, drifted through 1980s Halloweens, whispered about haunted games and creepy comics, and faced down the perfect organism itself. But before we close the book, I want to say this. Halloween isn't just a date on the calendar for me. It's one of my favorite times of the year, because it's the one season that belongs to all of us. For one night, mystery runs through every streetlight, every shadow, every carved pumpkin. For one night, you can be whoever or whatever you want. A monster, a hero, a ghost. You get to be a kid again. And that's the beauty of Halloween. We've got the rest of the year to pay bills, answer emails, and worry about all the so-called grown-up problems, but for this one month, this one night at a time, we get to believe in magic again. We get to chase mystery down the sidewalks, we get to laugh at the shadows and pretend the mask makes us something braver, something scarier, something freer than we are the other 364 days of the year. That's why I love Halloween, because it isn't just about costumes or candy. It's about giving ourselves permission to imagine, to play, to be anything we want. For one night, the whole world says, yes, you can. And that feeling, that's worth holding on to long after the porch lights have gone out. It's fun fear, safe chills, and sweet rewards. It's the closest thing we get to real magic. That's why Halloween matters to me, because it's not about candy or costumes. It's about community. It's about the stories we share with each other, the masks we put on, and the memories that outlast the night. So thank you for stepping into the dark with me. Thank you for pressing start on Nerdoween. And don't stop here. Keep the conversation going. Drop your top 5 slashers, your favorite 80s Halloween memory, your wildest gaming urban legend, or your real-life ghost stories in the comments, or email me at averagejoenerdcast@gmail.com. Your stories fuel the fire, and the best ones will get featured throughout the month's community checkpoints. And if you dug week 1 of Nerdoween, be sure to like, follow, rate, and review. That's what keeps the algorithm gods fed, so more people can find the show and we can continue to build this community. Now on to the shout-outs. Big shout-out to my player 2 for always rolling with my spooky obsessions and never saying no to a Xenomorph marathon. Shout-out to Cap, the one who keeps me honest, saw AJN in the fog and gave me the push to find it. And shout-out to my brother, always holding down the fort while I'm off chasing monsters and pixels. And Pickle, local cryptid of the show, seen only at 3:07 a.m., wearing a Spirit Halloween mask, whispering, "What's your favorite scary movie?" to a Roomba. If you hear distant crinkling of fun-sized wrappers, please do not engage, just run. And a final shout-out to you, everyone listening, rating, reviewing, sharing, and building this community with me. You make the pod possible, and you make Nerdoween worth celebrating. So stay gold, nerd bold, stay spooky, and remember, the night is young, and the story's just beginning.
Game over.
Weird. Did a whole episode kicking off Nerdoween and celebrating all things that make Halloween great and didn't get interrupted by Steve once. Maybe he finally... God damn it.